Hey everybody, my name is Shuja and welcome to the Parquet Show where we talk about all things related to parking and transportation in the city of Boston, and we love to bring on board thought leaders within the parking, transportation and clean energy spaces that can give us a better sense of our changing urban spaces. So today we have two guests, not one, two guests from an organization called E2 that's committed to advance smart energy policies in every region and at every level. As you all know, at Parkes, we are deeply involved in sustainability in the greater Boston area. So, without further ado, let's bring on our guest here, Uchenna Bright and Sarah Simon. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Good
Great. How are
afternoon.
you?
That's great. That's great. So just to give you guys a little background, who are we, talking to today? Uchenna is the Eastern States Advocate of E2. She has an extensive background working at NRDC and experience developing multifaceted strategies to deliver lasting change while making sound economic decisions to successfully transform markets in a productive, sustainable way. And Sarah, on the other hand, is the E2 New England chapter director, a state we at Parquet call home. She has previously worked as deputy director at the Division of Air Quality at the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, a long name, and is currently the E2 designated representative to the Governor's Implementation Advisory Committee, a public stakeholder group. Now that's incredible. Now we've got two heavyweights here, two people who have a wealth of experience, a wealth of insight that they can share with our community here at Parquets. I think just to start off with the biggest question that everybody has on their minds and that's constantly showing up on our news feeds is, has COVID-19 impacted our environment in a positive manner, or is there more to it than meets the eye? Anybody can take shots at
Well,
this.
the positive. I don't believe that it really has been a very positive, literal physical impact. It
Mhm.
has positively impacted us all to understand we can't go on the way we used to go on. Um, there are a lot of factors from how COVID came out of the woods because we've been destroying habitat, et cetera. But the transportation side of things, it looks like the emissions and the air pollution is way better than it was before COVID. And part of the problem is that as we all have to social distance, we're all going to start relying on private cars for safety
Right.
from now on. And that's a real challenge to our mobility, especially in Boston, the traffic congestion, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And, for any sort of the positives that you might see now on the transportation side, that could be, completely erased once people start getting back out there in their individual cars, and VMT is going to go up dramatically.
Vehicle
Well,
miles traveled. I guess most of your
Yeah.
audience knows that, right?
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in
It's
order to
just that.
reduce the vehicle miles, we'll just have to share some more rides, and you can do it in your own car with your own family pod. But whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is one thing that people are so happy about, but it's just a temporary change into how we
Exactly.
do our businesses and affairs. But hopefully, when this subsides, this there might be a rise again into our habits, our behaviors that have led to this kind of situation. Uh, what can we, as being a startup here at Parquets, and we're focused more at the greater Boston city area, how can we do more as businesses from a smart energy perspective? How can we make more empowered decisions when it comes to sustainability and how to make it work from a economic perspective? I think Sarah Uchenna could really talk about more on this, so how we can make more of those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things, and I was thinking, as far as like the positive perspective, one of the things that people have started to reconsider is the work dynamic. So how do you commute to work? Do you have a work from home? And if you are working from home, do you need all that office space and to use all that energy every day for like 400 people in an office? So I think making these decisions, and then also, I mean, I would say, for E2, we do in-person events is part of our regular sort of programming. And without like needing to have people travel to those events, you might that just adds a different dynamic where you can bring in more people. So for instance, in our Southeast chapter, we can have an event, that's based on the whole Southeast, and people from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia can come and be a part of that conversation without actually traveling anywhere except for, to their living room. And so I think that, rethinking how we work, how we commute, and where we're focusing our sort of intensity with that is a natural sort of, thought pattern that most people are starting to have right now, especially because of COVID.
Definitely a change. And I completely agree that the nature of work and where we work hopefully will change. People talked about it before. I tried to get my boss to let me stay home one day a week before, and now they know it's possible. So that's great. The other thing to factor in here, though, is that all these cars we have for commuting, and I will say that my last job, I was commuting 100 miles a day in my car because there was no other way to get there. And the car itself stays unused for 95% of the time, if not more. And so the whole way we think about getting around, where we have to go, mobility, that really has to change, and how we design our cities to accommodate that and to warehouse these cars is very important, because we have other better things to do with our streets, bicycling and walking and um, improving transit and all kinds of stuff. Active mobility, I guess they call it.
No, that's great. I think if you could, Sarah, talk a little bit more elaborate on what are these challenges that Massachusetts, particularly with Boston, are facing in terms of the use of land and the underutilization of land to a better effect. Let's say if that could be, talk more about that.
Well, I do know that that's the cities that have changed to what they call complete streets, where there's fewer lanes, the speed of the street is slower. There's been some resistance to that, and it's hard to make different lanes, to think of our cars and our spaces differently. There's been talk about more curbside pickup and delivery, whether it's your Amazon delivery truck, which hopefully will all be electric soon, or your own picking up an official rideshare commercial business. There's a lot of different options that we have to think of, really innovative stuff that we maybe can start thinking about now, because we know that what happened before is not what's going to continue or shouldn't
Right.
continue.
Absolutely. And I think what we all constantly see, and you can talk more about that even, Chenna, is like there a dissonance and a disconnect between how people or consumers are using the spaces and how the policies that the government is making. Is there a way we can bridge that gap to make better, sustainable, cleaner decisions when it comes to that? Is there a role that government needs to play, much bigger role than it is? Because we recently, in the last administration, they pulled off from the Paris Accord and stuff like that came about. But does it really affect, when it comes to state level policies and everyday, day to day,
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's two sort of, at this point, kind of separate things in a little bit of a way. So on the federal side, I would say absolutely, there's a lot more that could be done. I mean, I think that bipartisan approach to environmental policy and economically sound environmental policy, which is what E2 advocates for, is not a partisan issue. Good economics, a good environment, these are not things that are at odds, and they're not something that are really partisan. It's a prosperity for all kind of thing, and so that should not be a partisan issue. And I think that, in a little bit of a way, we've just sort of gotten bogged down by that partisanship, but that we can rise above that, hopefully on the federal level. And I think, in the absence of federal policy, very much so, the states do a lot. And I think the East Coast is a good model of that. Both in Massachusetts and New York, North Carolina has some really great stuff coming out of it as well. So, and I think that, even after the U.S. pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, states voluntarily, the governors in states voluntarily, many of them said we're going to still try to meet these goals and requirements. So I think that it's critical that there's government leadership combined with an understanding of what the needs are for communities and local areas.
The states and even the towns and the counties have been a very important player. I mean, we see it every day. We see the cars on the road. We know our neighbors are struggling with getting from here to there. We have vans from our councils on aging in Massachusetts, because there comes a point when people can't drive, but they still have to get around. Services for medical medical care, for healthcare, services for getting people to and from work who don't have cars and can't afford to pay for parking spaces, or even have these new cars. And electric cars are really going to be a big improvement as we rebuild, and the cities and states are really serious about this, especially like regional organizations, even of the environmental agencies. There's a big push to do a regional program that will charge the gasoline and diesel companies for the pollution that they're putting out, the carbon pollution, and those funds will be invested in things like a charging network, like helping to rebuild city streets, that kind of thing.
No, that's a great insight that you've shared, because even we've had previous conversations with other thought leaders in terms of when it comes to electric cars and how we can be that hub, or that we can be provide those services for electric charging at our parking spots at a different parts of the city, just to give us just to be this new voice and this new push in the right direction when it comes to sustainability. But what do you at at E2, dealing with different sorts of businesses, that's with different entrepreneurs. What is the big thought, the big concern that E2 really pushes new businesses or young businesses to when it comes to clean energy?
Do you want to
Go
take?
ahead.
I would say get involved. I think that E2, a huge part of our ability to get things done is our members. So our members advocate for policies, and their business voice has a huge impact on decision making. So, because they understand the economic value of these policies that we're pushing. And so, it's absolutely critical that, from a membership standpoint, that our members be 100% involved in the policies that we're advocating for.
Environmental Entrepreneurs, our organization, is individual members, individual people who are either building businesses or concerned about how business interacts in the culture. And we are, a lot of us, because the clean energy business has been the market and the economy, we're very concerned about the charging. We have members who are helping to set up charging, that kind of thing. We have a lot of members who are producing no carbon energy, and perhaps that no carbon energy is going to be better combined with charging stations for cars and for parking. But as Uchenna says, this won't happen without advocacy for and pushing for the right policies, and that certainly has happened in New England. E2 New England was part of the move that founded our Global Warming Solution Act 10 years ago, and that was, to make sure we get to 80% greenhouse gas reductions by 2050. And now we've advocated for upgrading that to net zero, and that's about to happen in Massachusetts. And those things are going to require huge changes in the mobility systems and the building systems. Transportation is nationally and in Massachusetts 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions. However, in the cities, which is where your group is worrying about the parking stuff, In the cities, transportation is not 40% of the emissions. Transportation is only about 22% of Boston's emissions. That percentage goes up a little bit as you go outside of Boston, and the transit services are not as good. But just getting cars to places where people can then make those connections and put more people in right-sized vehicles and right-sized routes to where they're going. And actually, that's a key thing that I think you're working on in Parkees is the right route to where you want to go. I mean, if you're driving into Boston and you know you have to go to a meeting at a certain address, you could spend 20 minutes looking for a parking spot. You might end up walking, I don't know, 10 blocks, whatever. If we know where we're going, that's a whole more efficient system, and that certainly is a part of how we have to clean up and be sustainable and find a sustainability equation for the future.
That's basically my life in Massachusetts in a nutshell. Walking for 20 minutes and then trying to find a parking. It's always been a huge issue, and I think it
Take the T or a
affects.
bike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are more sustainable options. When I've been looking up, these other, organizations like, you have the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center that's focused on providing more eco-friendly options for businesses. Are these organizations, or maybe from the state itself, the state of Massachusetts, providing more helpful incentives for businesses like ours to really make more clean energy decisions? Is there a more push towards that?
The CEC, the Mass CEC, is our what in New York I think it's NYSERDA, the Energy Research and Development. We're not a big state. We don't have the kind of funds California or New York has, but they do seed businesses and ideas, and have produced a lot of companies and a lot of benefit and growth, economic growth. I don't know how many of my entrepreneur fellow E2 members have been able to take advantage of that, although a lot of the work they do is in trying to get solar commercialized, et cetera, the CEC. Other, for your kind of digital platform efficiency measures that they're just bursting out all over these apps, so to speak. The other main ones that we know about are Uber and Lyft. They've clearly made their own economic and market decisions, and the state has not really looked into that. From what I've seen, the state is not great on trying to use smart tech and support smart tech. I don't know whether that's because the Department of Transportation is different from the Department of Environmental Protection, is different from the Clean Energy Center, the Department of Energy Resources. There's a lot of we're silos that we're trying to get to work better together. So that could be part of the problem, is they've never looked at the overarching kinds of things that can be done today, the matrix kinds of things. So in terms of how we're encouraging that, I think Mass CEC might be one of the better places to look for supporting entrepreneurs. But then there's a whole lot of nonprofit kinds of things. There's the New England Clean Energy Council, I think, NECEC. There's a lot of groups of businesses together. There's a Better City. There's Alliance of Business Leaders. So there's an awful lot of non-governmental associations and things. There's a chambers of commerce, and they're across the innovate. Are you part of that? Perhaps Parquets. I'm not coming up with the name right. The centers
We're
of.
not currently associated, but yes, I think these are, what you've been mentioning. I think these are great resources for us to more tap into and look into, because, the digital side of things need to be really addressed. And I think, getting into those organizations, having a more say in towards digital communications and apps and technology, I think that would be a really great push for New England when it comes to that energy sector and all that. I think that would be a great way to look at the new conversations we can have.
I do know that the transportation people have been thinking about connected cars and roadways for some time. They do it because of road counts, and I think the federal government actually started this perhaps a decade ago. And so the idea of having more wireless information data is important, and it is built into some of the engineering that's going on. But the Chambers of Innovation, I think, is the name of the group that is, instead of just the Chambers of Commerce, they are especially interested in businesses that will build a good, clean, modern economy, sustainable one.
I think that's a really great insight. Those are really great resources that we can tap into, look into, go, really do go after them because absolutely, I think these are vital things to be considering when, not only running a business, but even starting a business in Massachusetts in the greater Boston City area. And with that being said, like, how do we see, what advice like startups like ours can look into when it comes to like, ways we can limit or eradicate factors that contribute to air pollution or toxic chemicals? Any specific ways to look into? How do we what role can we play into, are we currently playing a role? Should we play a bigger role when it comes to that?
Well, I know that it's hard for new companies to spend time on relationships with their legislators or their mayors, et cetera, but you can serve on various committees and commissions that they have. It does take time. Mostly, when I think of clean energy and stuff, it ends up being the electricity systems, and people needing their electricity for their new cars that are going to happen. On the other hand, the things like, well, no, I mean, one of the ways that E2 members contribute is to work with transit issues and clean buses and things. I don't know. Certainly, if Park A's keeps traffic off the roads and out of the bus stops, it will make everything work better.
Yeah. We're on it. We're trying now, but COVID and everything. But absolutely, I think just to close off our conversation, I think we've had some really great insights and really great thoughts to go about, and I'm sure that's going to help our Parquets community just to think about how can we sustainably build. When it comes to transportation and land area, how can we build sustainably better transportation systems that can lead to better overall health in cities like even New York or in Boston? How can we, what roles should what initiatives should not just our company itself but just generally can those roles be played? I'd love you, Uchenna, to talk more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Sarah touched on this a little bit too when she was talking about complete streets. So, I mean, I think with transportation, you think about the transportation system and you kind of think about your personal vehicle. But I think it's much more than that. So it's like, how you move people and goods. Um, and you can move people and goods in a variety of ways, which includes active transportation. Complete streets has a variety of different sort of ways of being. So certainly transit oriented development. So as you're making you know sort of what am I searching for here? So like redeveloping brownfields, for instance, to
Right.
be not just a hole in your neighborhood, but an actual useful building that could have a green roof that also helps with heat island effect and also helps with not having a beautiful place for people to walk around. And that's maybe more on the urban side, but there's plenty of different things that you can do in an urban, suburban, and rural setting. And Sarah talked briefly about this regional transportation initiative that we've been talking about regionally on the East Coast. It's called the Transportation and Climate Initiative, which is like thinking not just about electric vehicles, but investing in public transportation, investing in better broadband, investing in more walkable, bikeable streets,
Right.
and investing in people's future. So I think having a holistic approach and not just thinking about not just thinking about maybe personal vehicles, but also heavy duty vehicles. That's a serious, emitter and something that has a very negative consequences on health. So thinking about it as a whole package in the neighborhood development, in your transportation choices, and in the types of vehicles that are part of those transportation choices, it's a full package.
And Sarah, do you see any specific opportunity or gap where in Massachusetts there might be a more opportunity to something different that we can pull off, like Uchenna's talked about more on a broader scale? Is there anywhere we can, maybe Massachusetts has this opportunity or maybe has this particular challenge that they need to really address when it comes to all of that?
Well, as we look at what's happened, we're very fortunate that our leaders in the past, over the years, have invested in a lot of the policies and things that allow for either complete streets, shared streets, and have done a lot of work on even cleaning up our electricity system. But oops, lost your question. Could you please ask once
Yeah,
again?
sure. No, I'm basically saying like, is Massachusetts has a particular challenge when it comes to pulling off those initiatives, the larger conversation, or maybe
Right.
is there an opportunity that makes it easier to pull them off?
Right. Well, there are a lot of tools, but in the transportation and mobility mode, the rural areas are now finally being looked at, because rural drivers are what make that 40% emissions, um, our carbon dioxide
Right,
thing. And we do have a network of regional transportation authorities, and that can be worked a lot better with transit transfers between them, with schedules, with perhaps with custom routes. Maybe even parking at the train stations could be handled by a Parquet's kind of application. So if we can combine that with some kind of ways for people not to drive alone in their cars,
right,
that's definitely a gap. But we even have any company in Massachusetts with more than 500 people has to have a ride sharing plan for its
right.
employees to commute to work. So we've done a lot, and there I think we can build on that and improve on it here in many areas.
No, that's incredible. I think the insights and your opinions, I think they will really help, our Parquets community, people who are listening and watching this. I think it's going to really help them maneuver within these challenging times, this challenging, things that we're going across. Any last words, any last statements for our Parquets community in terms of how can we play just on an individual level, how can we play a much more cleaner role?
Well, it's important to think about why you get in your car and go somewhere. It's sort of an efficiency thing. It's like the efficiency of, do you really need to buy that second or third set of whatever it is that's made of plastic? You don't usually, and I think COVID has kind of taught us that. Same thing goes for your rides. The more you can plan out your rides and put things into one trip. When I drive my car, it's about a pound of carbon dioxide for every mile I go. So I've really started to think about, do I really want to go 12 miles down to the nearest shopping center? And let's
Right.
package all the errands I have to run together, because I don't live right in the city. So I
Yeah.
think that's something we all have to think about, is using less, doing, wanting less, consuming less, so that our energy demand and our costs end up being smaller, and we can be more sustainable in general, all of us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything, Shannon, you'd like to add to that?
No, that was well said.
Yeah, well said, right? Like that's end of conversation. She did it. She pulled it off.
Mic
Yeah.
drop.
Mic drop. Exactly. I think that's great. So I think just to share your links with people who can learn more about E2, more businesses, young startups can look more about you guys. I think I'm sharing the website here, www.e2.org. They can definitely follow you guys there and learn about what you're doing and reach out to you guys. At the same time, they can also look up you guys on Twitter and at E2ORG. So definitely people who are tweeting, could definitely get into it and learn more about you guys. For us Parquets, people can learn more about us at We Are Parquets. And you can also go to our website, www.parkes.com. I think this has been an incredible conversation with some really thoughtful people that have different opinions, people from different parts of the world, different backgrounds. I think this is just an incredible thing to have. Thank you guys for
Thank you,
coming on,
Shuja.
Thank
and
you.
hope you all have a great day. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye
Bye.
now.